This revolution in technology of food production and its associated private property rights became a weapon of war and of politics. Gradually, this new idea of private property rights became enhanced to include dwellings, private storage, and ownership of garden plots by families. As a population became sedentary or increasingly sedentary, then they began to embrace the ideal of a place of their own. Private property rights had irrevocably and inextricably been linked to technological advancement in agriculture, politics, and military intervention. And the masters of technology, politics, and military were the Romans, who embraced private property rights in a manner never seen before. The Romans ruled and organised its world, extending as far west as Britain until its eventual collapse in the 5th century AD. For nearly 800 years after the decline of the Roman Empire, Britain and Europe struggled to socially recover from its demise. By about the time of the year 1200 AD, Britain had constructed a mixture of fragmented and impermanent landed property rights, a peerage system of powerful barons and earls, and a mighty military fighting force, all ruled under a despot king with unlimited authority and a nasty temper. The stage was set. In the words of Harold Demsetz, in the world of Robinson Crusoe, property rights play no role. Property rights are an instrument of society and derive their significance from the fact that they help a man, in his words, form those expectations which he can reasonably hold in his dealings with others. These expectations find expression in the laws, customs, and mores of a society. An owner of property rights possesses the consent of fellowmen to allow him to act in particular ways. An owner expects the community to prevent others from interfering with his actions, provided that these actions are not prohibited in the specification of his rights. We see a few concepts there in property rights, including that we have this expression in terms of laws, customs, and mores of a society. Mores being the moral expectations or the ethics of a society. But there's also this expectation that in order to be granted private property rights, that someone should act in a particular manner, but also provide something back to the community. The fall of the Roman Empire left Britain and much of Europe in disarray for hundreds of years. The invasion of Britain by Saxons was inevitable and did little to reorganise land tenure after the Romans had left. Instead, a almost higgledy-piggledy feudal land system involved in which land could be held, however, in exchange for loyalty to the crown and service or provision of labour within the social structure. The sovereign ultimately owned all land within the realm. The tenure system was based on social standing, usually with the sovereign, who granted royal land to important tenants, who could then tenant the land out to others under a sub-infeudation process. Land ownership was provided, usually at the whim of the sovereign, and probably without rights of inheritance, subject to various obligations including work, military service, and payment of taxations. Occupation of the land by peasants or serfs was permitted in turn for working for the lord of the manor or subject to a proportion of crops as payment for the land. So in this intervening period after the fall of the Roman Empire in the 5th century BC and right up until around the 12th century BC, around the 1100s, there had been this development of a feudal land system. But the feudal land system was based upon ultimate ownership of the land being by the king, who at his or her whim granted occupation rights to various peoples of his pleasure or their pleasure and for their pleasure. So in the event that the monarch became displeased with a certain person who had significant holdings, they simply stripped all those holdings away from that person and gave them to someone else. It was a system of favoritism, if you like, but it was also a system of repayment, if you like, for services rendered. And some of these landowners, these big barren landowners, were required to provide people to the monarch in the event that such were required. And this happened from time to time when there was a battle between the kingdoms of England or even the potential invasion from other countries. Under those circumstances, the military of the king or the sovereign could be bolstered by peasants or servants or serfs of the landowners as repayment for holding the land. In the event that those services or those people were not provided, then the king could, or the monarch could simply wipe out that land holding and say bye to the baron and insert someone new who would be loyal to the sovereign.